This is Jack Davis. I call to order regular meeting of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee, starting at 7:01. We have to do a motion to revise the agenda as was sent out. So what we are going to be revising is, number one, we're adding school $225,000.
You should be ready to go. You should be ready to go.
Also adding a
Okay.
$50,000 grant for the town affordable housing study.
Gonna have
And
Mike
we're
in
also
there.
moving on the revised schedule, the affordable housing study to the first item on the agenda. Do I have somebody who's moving the motion to revise our agenda? Stacy, Mike seconded.
That you,
Okay.
Waddy?
How are you?
You got on. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay. So now, Amy, if you want to call
Okay,
your meeting.
I just want to say our secretary is not here this evening, so could I have a
Michael?
volunteer to take some simple
Michael, I can hear the
notes?
education committee meeting.
I'll do it, Claire.
I was wondering, I thought that sounded like
Michael?
like Clara's voice.
I just muted myself.
Thank you.
For whatever reason, I could just hear the education committee meeting.
Because Mike's at both meetings. He's running
Oh.
education.
Awesome. Thank you.
Amy, do you want to call your meeting to order?
Yes, I'm just trying to, with all that commotion, I was trying to figure out if I had a quorum. Mike, do I have a quorum here? I'm just trying to go through the list.
You have Mike, Callan, Marcy,
Caller
Martha,
number 2, can you identify yourself?
Mike, yourself. You have 7.
Yep,
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry. I think you have 7.
Who's
Yes,
caller
you have
two?
7.
Caller
3,
2,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8. Yes, I have a quorum. It is now 7:02, 7:03, and the Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee special meeting has called to order.
caller
Okay.
2, could you identify yourself, please?
That may be me. It's Scott Zimmerman. I'm having trouble with the audio through my computer, so I have
That's
both.
you. Thank you, Scott.
Okay. I need a motion, actually from both committees, to discuss and take action on the approval for an application for a $15,000 grant for the town's affordable income study.
So
I
moved.
have Stacy from F&B. Do I have a second on that motion from F&B? Louisa, I saw your hand up. You're there. Okay.
Louisa, yep.
Okay, do we have somebody moving it from P&Z and H?
Caroline Luz. And a second,
Martha, I saw had her hand.
Caroline Bain. Okay.
Good. Okay. So we're graced with Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy. Long time no see. Do you want to provide information on this?
I can certainly add any background. It's a pretty straightforward request that the state must be about a year and a half ago. They had a first round of grants for communities to work on their state required affordable housing plans. Every community in the state of Connecticut has to have an affordable housing plan done by next June 2022. So about a year and 2 weeks from today. So very few communities have finished theirs. There's some that are starting out, some are in the midst, but the state, in an effort to get communities moved along, has offered up a pot of money, which you can see from the paperwork, for communities to get started and get moving. We expect in Darien that the affordable housing plan will take about 9 to 10 months to complete. We do have in the budget, in the capital budget, we did get money a few years ago to cover the costs for this plan, but I believe it was the thought of the administration is if we can get a grant from the state of Connecticut to offset all or a part of those costs, why not make that application and give it a shot? So that's what's on your plate tonight is potential for a $15,000 grant. From what I hear, the money is first come, first served. But my belief is if the RTM can approve it, get the authorization, we would make application in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
I also understand that from Kate that it is required for the legislative body to approve the putting in for an application. I don't know how
That is
best to say it. So are there any questions? I do believe you have about 25,000 in there, if I'm not mistaken, something along those lines.
I have a couple questions, Jack.
Go ahead.
All right, first is, any sense, Jeremy, as to how much the total cost will be?
Well, I was just on the phone with one of the potential consultants earlier this evening, and certainly what he explained to me is many different towns have proceeded with this to differing extents. Some communities are doing very thorough data gathering and long surveys and number of meetings and public hearings. And I think we're thinking shorter than that. Certainly, the Western Connecticut Council of Governments has offered to pitch in for all the WestCog communities. So they are starting in on some data gathering. So that will certainly help offset the costs. We have not prepared a final scope of services. We've reached out to a few consultants, but the final scope of services has not been defined. And the amount of the cost of the work would really depend on what work we have the consultants do. So I would certainly say it's going to be more than 15,000, but again, it depends how much we can do in-house versus having outsiders work on, and how much WestCog can help as well.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. Just to kind of get a better sense, at least on my part, as to the size of it, is this the first such study that we will have done as a town?
The town did complete an affordable housing plan. I think it was in 2009 when Yvonne Klein was first select woman. They had an affordable housing committee that assisted the Board of Selectmen with that. Certainly, there's a lot of good ideas, and we can use that as a jumping off point. But this is the first plan that the town of Darien would be doing under the state statute, which came out in 2017. So that dictated that each community does one at least every 5 years.
So I appreciate that, Jeremy. So just I don't know whether you have any recollection or not, any sense as to what recollections to the cost of that last study you just mentioned?
I do not, because much of it was done in-house. Much of it was done through the Affordable Housing Committee. I do not know how much was spent on that back in 2009.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jeremy. Just wanted to ask a few of those questions. Thank you.
It is important to note that there, and Jeremy had mentioned this, there is in the Reserve Fund for Capital Non-Recurring Expenditures an amount. For some reason, I think it's about 25,000. It may actually be more. So there is funding for this already. But like anything else, anytime we can get some money from the state to do something that the state actually wants us to do, all the better. So is there any other questions on that, or are we
Jeremy?
ready to vote?
Jeremy?
Oh, go ahead.
Quick question. You made a mention to the costs depend on whether you're doing it in-house versus through consultants. Does the grant, you have unilateral decisions on how you apply that 15,000? Should we get a grant, or does it have to be designated just to consultants, or can it also be designated for, hired employees and their expenses?
I would have to double check on that, but my belief it would be for outside assistance. So it would not, my belief is it would not be able to be used to pay existing employees. It would be paid for outside consultants to work directly on the plan.
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, this is Martha. I came in late. What item on the agenda are we talking about right now?
It's something that we had to add. It's $15,000, which the RTM needs to approve for the town to apply for up to $15,000 grant for the town's affordable
Okay,
housing
yes.
study.
All right.
Just to add a couple of little quick things. The grant is only available for those towns with less than 50,000 residents, which we qualify. And I think the total pot is about 500,000. So it's a good 30 to 40 towns that could get some part of that money, depending upon how they spread it out. Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna let the PZNH committee vote first. Again, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
Amy,
Jeremy.
do you want to do your vote? You can.
Sure. Yep. Planning, zoning, and housing. Are we all ready to call for a vote?
Yeah.
Make a motion. Ready? Make a motion to vote. Someone?
Mike Wheeler, I will.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Anyone to second it?
Marcy Minnick, I will second.
Marcy. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. With that, if I can, Jack, also make a motion for the Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee to adjourn.
Yep.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Mike. All right, seconded, and the other Mike. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. We have double duty, so we're back on tomorrow night. So we'll take our
Yes,
leave.
that's one thing I do want to say. There's a really great meeting happening tomorrow where P&Z Commission is going and bringing in several of our legislators to discuss the recent legislation that passed on basically P&Z. So if you have an opportunity to tune in, it will definitely be a meeting worthwhile to listen to. Very informative.
And that starts at 6 o'clock. It's early. So it's a 6 o'clock meeting.
Expect
you,
it to
Amy.
last about an hour, so it's not going to go very long. The legislators have been very grateful or helpful, and we don't want to take up too much of their time. So it's probably going to run from about 6 to 7, and they're going to talk about the recent legislation, which will affect every community in the state.
Okay. All right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
PCNH, for joining us, even though it was short.
Thank
You
you.
can stay out if you want to. We got a lot of stuff to do today.
All right, guys. See you later.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we have a motion that's on the floor. I'm gonna do the reverse. Is there any no's against passing this? We're actually secondary on it. Do I hear any no's? Hearing none. Do I hear any abstentions? Hearing none. Can I assume that everyone is in favor of this and it's a unanimous vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yes.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Is that the total you have, Mike? 15, because I'm here. I didn't count. 15-0, Mike?
Sorry, I was on mute. I have 13, Jack. Let me count them off. I have Gary, Martha, Louisa, yourself, myself, James, Bob Lyons, Iris, Peter, Jenny, Stacy, Bert, and Lisa.
And
There should be
Barry.
13. And who?
And did you mention James Howe and Jan Raymond?
I have James Howe. I don't have Jan, no.
Jan's here.
Okay, and you had
Okay,
Barry,
Jan, thank
right?
you. So I'm
Okay.
at 14, Jack.
Myself twice. Okay,
I'm at
only
14.
because we have Superintendent Adley and John Cini. Take a motion to move the Board of Ed Facilities Security System as our next on the agenda, so we can knock that off and everybody can go home happily. Oh, we also have Monica. Hi, Monica.
Hi.
Okay. So, let me just first start with this. This is a security system for our school facility. And as I've mentioned to several people, the Allied forces did not provide the D-Day attack plans to the Germans prior to the attack. There is limited information that we will have on this, and that's to ensure safety for our facilities, our staff, and our children that are in those facilities. So, basic overall area is they put out a bid for Ox Ridge. The current provider did not provide a bid for Ox Ridge. We want all of our schools to be on the same system. The system that they are moving to is used in other communities. The Darien Police Department has been actively involved. They had 3 executive sessions where they looked at this in depth. The total cost of the project is $325,000. $100,000 for already exists in the reserve fund for capital non-recurring items, which makes a $225,000 request for special appropriations. I presented to the Board of Finance members and then to Dr. Adley and Duke that in fact the RTM is in a position, because education is dealing with this now, we are dealing with it also, and we can approve this special appropriation on contemplation that the Board of Finance are going to approve it tomorrow at their meeting. I had breakfast with Jim Palin and Jay-Z on Sunday. I have no doubt that will be approved. It could then move to the Board of Selectmen, which is required on any special appropriation from the general fund at the Board of Selectmen's June 21st meeting, where they will be meeting before us, to which it would then pass to us, and everything could get done in a normal course of business. On the same token, the other option is to take it out of what is already an excessive amount in the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures, capital reserve, which sits at in the latest amount at 550,000, when it probably should be someplace in the neighborhood about 3. By the way, I am not saying anything out of school that I did not deliver to both John and to Jim when we had breakfast. And in fact, Jim also would like to bring that amount down. I tend to believe that they're going to take it out of the capital reserve, but we're going to have 2 votes on this. The first one is to approve it coming from the general fund in contemplation that the Board of Finance will approve it tomorrow. After we do that, we can have a second vote that says we will support if the Board of Finance chooses to take it from the capital reserve. So I need a motion to move this item, which is number 6 on the revised agenda. I see Stacy and then Lisa as the second. Are there any questions?
Of course.
What do you mean, of course?
Just for understanding the timeline on this, how come it wasn't in the budget? I mean, did
I'll
we
let
just
Dr.
decide to do this
Adley
like a
respond
month
to that.
ago, or like why, how did it, I mean, why isn't it in the budget?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. It wasn't in the budget because it wasn't identified at the budget time. Some of the variables that Mr. Chairman just spoke about in terms of the company not meeting its responsibilities and deadlines came after the actual budget process. So that's the main reason. As the variables weren't before us as we developed the budget.
Did we have money in the budget for the Oxbridge security that didn't come about, but was it in the budget for
Yes,
the
it's,
Oxbridge?
this is for 6 schools because Oxbridge already has this included in their building um, fund, whatever you want to call it, for the new school. So this is to bring the other 6 schools, and then when Oxbridge comes on, it will be on this system as well.
And
So,
it
Mr.
is
Chairman, it was
budgeted
actually
for Oxbridge already in their building
Both.
fund.
Yes, it's in the Oxbridge building fund. But go ahead, Dr. Adley.
I'll just say that there was $100,000 identified actually in this last year's budget, and we didn't spend it in the capital plan because as the time went on here in the second part of the semester, it became clear that I was going to have to change that system and not invest any more money in it for a variety of reasons. And that decision and that timing didn't happen until after the budget was actually completed.
I do want to add one thing, Iris. Had this come up with the extra 225,000, I do believe that it would have been paid for with a transfer out of the capital reserve, or it would have been paid for out of general fund. So because they were going to zero out capital, but that is a very fair question, one that I had asked also, Iris.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not opposed to security for our schools. I just feel as if I just hope that y'all had been talking about this way before, 30 days from the budget process, that we longer, and that it should have been at least some sort of placeholder or some discussion should have been had during the budget process. So it just makes things simpler and more together when things fall into the budget.
I totally agree. And if the variables before me had been the ones that I considered down the stretch, we certainly would have put it in the budget. But certainly hear your concern there, and it's understandable.
And in fact, I'm going to add that not once, but twice, Chairman Duke has heard from Seth about at least giving the RTM a heads up, even though there's not a lot of information he could have given us because these were being discussed in executive session, but at least a heads up that, hey, we may be bringing something to you down the road. So that has been resolved, and Seth and Chairman Duke and I have all had that conversation. So hopefully this does not recur next year.
This was in the budget for 21.
Yeah, 100,000. There's 100,000 for
Yeah,
already in the
I
budget.
mean, I kind of second what Iris said. I mean, to me, this looks like, and I support it absolutely, but it looks like to me you decided the Oxbridge system was best, and you wanted to go with that. It's, again, I
Mr. Chairman,
support it, but
I have to correct the record. That is not, Martha, respectfully, that is not correct. At the end of the day, we had $100,000 in the capital that we were going to invest in that same system. I had to make a decision for the safety of the kids and the security. I can't invest that money anymore. I have to replace this system, and that decision didn't take place till afterwards. It's not a matter of Oxbridge is getting that system. Therefore, we would get it. That is not what happened.
All right. Well, I understand that the other people didn't come through, but it seems last minute. But anyway, I do support it. It sounds like a good system.
Mike, we're up to 15, I believe. Are we ready to vote, or are there
Yes,
any
we
other
are, Jack.
questions?
I'm at 15 as well. Thank you.
Okay, if we're ready to vote, then Dr. Adley can go and have dinner. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there- I hear no abstentions or noes. I'm listening. At silence, it passes 15-0. Thank you, Dr. Adley. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you for attending our session and providing input.
Thank you, folks. Thank you very much.
Okay, now we're on to, interesting enough, those are the two. Oh, we have to have two votes. I'm sorry. So the first vote that I'll take, the 15-0, was for approval for these funds to come out of the general. Now we have to vote of whether or not we support, if in fact this comes out of the $550,000 capital reserve, which would bring it down to 325,000, which is about where I thought it should be anyway to begin the year.
Jack, just the capital reserve, is that the reserve for capital non-recurring expenses?
That is their extra, that's their contingency in that fund, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on that? Hearing none.
Can we have a motion, Jack?
Yes, I need a motion on that, on the second part. Jan is moving it. Do I have a second? I see Jenny as the second. All in favor of that? Say aye. Okay, I will let you know.
Aye.
So that passes as well. I will tomorrow. If they choose to take from the capital reserve, I will be speaking before we go into the various motions to explain the transaction and what has occurred. I will also note, Iris, your comment, because I think it was raised by several others during the conversation and the discussion. I will explain the two options that were given, whether or not it comes out of the general fund or the Board of Finance's discretion to use out of capital reserve, what the balance in that account is based upon the meeting that they're having on the 15th, and what the ending balance would be. In theory, at least, because this is going to come on one of the other ones that we have, in theory, there's a 10-day window after it gets approved to use it. However, there's something, so for 10 days, in theory, they can't spend it, but the reality is they will, because you just set it up as an account. So just wanted to know that this will be reported on, and the commentary of why it wasn't at least a heads up during the budget be noted. Okay, on to item discuss and take action on the extending of the term of town employees on the town pension board to 2 years. We sort of were given this. You know, it's really a TGS&A is number one on this. The rationale is that by the time you learn what's going on in the pension board, and pardon me, since I'm not a pension guy, and by the time they've fallen asleep during most of those meetings, they need another year to really be an active participant. If we have an option not to report, so I'll ask whether or not you think we should. If we are going to report after TGS&A gives their discussion, I think the best we're going to say is, yeah, good idea. End of report. So first, do you think we should report or not? Oh, that's helpful. Dead silence. Jenny, I'm gonna pick on you. Should we report? I'm gonna pick on Bert next, and he's on mute.
It would, yeah, we should. I just, we don't really have, there's not a lot of information that we tend to get on the pension. I know I forwarded to you, Jack. I actually did request to see how the performance was. It looks great. I'm not in a position to consult on, what I think about it. I think I'll leave that to the pension people, the pension board people. But I think it's always helpful to be, for this committee, at least be aware of what the pension board's doing, and it's, how they've got a long-term consultant in there who's done a fabulous job for them. And we should be, at least I would hope, to review at least what their performances looks like, and just to check in. So I think it makes sense for it, but in order to do that, we should probably get in the habit of requesting just an update from them from time to time.
As you were speaking, Jenny, I think that's a great idea, and I just said maybe we should just have them come and give a presentation at one of our September or October meetings, just so that we can, first, they can educate us, and second, they can give a little discussion of what's going on. I think that's a great idea. Mike?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I agree with Jenny's sentiments. What I'm wrestling with, though, Jack, is just what are we reporting on? I mean, I think traditionally we provide to the RTM, right, the dollars and cents, the financial impacts of whatever we're reporting on. In this instance, though, it's escaping me exactly what the dollars and cents specifics are that we'll be reporting on. So if that's the case, and people feel that way, then simply tell the RTM there is no specific budget or financial impact to the town, but it signals our intention as a committee to work closely with this group going forward. But beyond that, those are my only thoughts about just what specifics we'd be reporting on, Jack, in our customary way.
Mike,
Jack, we saw Jenny and Bob's hand, just so you know.
Okay, I just want to respond to Mike. That's part of the reason why I question why we would report or not, because I don't see the dollar cents other than to say, good idea. Bob?
Yeah, my only point is just for my own edification, I'd like to know what the general views of the pension funds monies are. So if we're making general statements or decisions or observing decisions made by the treasurer on funding, it would be nice to know if it's consistent or inconsistent with where the pension's going, which we may or may not be able to get out of that information, but I think it would be helpful.
Well, that's why I think Jenny's concept of at least let's start with the first thing, and we can just make it into an annual review as part of F&B.
I think I wanted to add, I think last year we saw an increase, right? An appropriation. And that can be explained by the pension board of whether that was performance related or if that was just an actuarial, surprise, right? That happens from time to time when you get a new actuarial study and you suddenly find out that things have changed in your employment profile and therefore your expenses have gone up. And, I think, I don't know that we're not the pension board, so we can't comment on what I don't think it's about what they should or shouldn't be doing. It's just more about them explaining to us what happened, why it happened, so that we're representative, right, of our constituents, of the taxpayers. So we get the story, so we understand the story. So if someone comes up and says, hey, why'd that number go up? We can say, well, this is why it went up. So I think
yes, and I think having it in the public forum, even though those meetings are recorded, but I don't know that a lot of people tune in to them. Might be good. It is my understanding, and again, I could be completely wrong, that gains or losses in the portfolio are spread over 5 years. So when you're calculating the accrual, and the pension may have been hit a little bit by what happened during the start of the COVID, and the recovery hadn't quite taken place, so that there may be a change again next year. Plus, there was some actuarial changes, including the fact that people that work for government tend to live long for some reason.
So,
But
Jack, since you asked me to comment, I think it behooves us to look at the issue and report on it, because we're the financial guys. Everyone is looking to us. What do you guys think? Everyone is confused right now. The volatility in the market, the COVID situation, all these things that you guys mentioned, changing in actuarial assumptions. This is something that we should probably report regularly on, just so that people are more comfortable. There's a lot of insecurity because the state government has some issues with how they provide for their pension liabilities. And a liability is just that. It's a liability. It hangs over your head. So I think that's what we need to do. And I'll be happy to spearhead that effort.
oh, great. I'll join you with Jenny. That's just what you need, something else to do. Are we ready to vote on this?
Jack,
I
we'll
think-
need to have a motion, I think, and a second.
That's what I'm gonna ask. No, I think we actually did the motion.
Did we?
Yeah. But we'll do it again since I have no recollection of who did what.
I'll motion.
I'll
All right, so I have Stacy move, Lisa second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye, is there anybody against? We're at 15, so that's 15-0. Okay, we'll start this one off better. I need a motion to discuss and take action on the gender neutral resolution for the town ordinances. We are secondary on this, and we will only be addressing the
I had
financial
another call
component.
come in and I could not hear the results.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
He's muted.
Frozen.
You hear me all right?
Yep.
Now we can.
I'm sorry, I had another call come in that cut out my audio, so I missed the entire vote. What was the results of the last vote? Can somebody tell me?
500 in favor, none against.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The background happens to be grandchildren.
I'm on mute.
Okay. Now let's move. Discuss and take action on the gender neutral resolution for town ordinances. Do I have a motion?
I will motion.
I will.
I'm going to move Beth first because you've taken a couple, and I'll have Stacy as second. Okay, this is an initiative where basically we will be hiring a group that does and maintains our ordinances to search the ordinances and move the gender to neutral pronouns. This has been done in many other cities and towns across the country. It is, in my opinion, a women's rights issue. We will also be eliminating the section 1 of the current ordinance that says one pronoun is equal to both pronouns. And when people have responded to me on that, I said, good, let's change everything to select woman and hers and she's and feminine. And they get real upset with that. So I said, let's make it neutral. There's a financial component of this resolution. And the financial component is, while we will be approving this, the RTM does not have funding. So we will be requesting the Board of Selectmen and potentially the Board of Finance to fund the $4,500 for this ordinance. If in fact the Board of Selectmen opts to do a budget transfer, let's face it, we are returning $3.4 million to the town coffers thereabouts. And there is some funds in the town clerk budget, from what I understand, which is where the RTM expenses are. They could fund it by transfer, as both Kate and Jen have the authority to transfer up to $5,000 without approval. However, if not, then it goes to the after it goes through the Board of Selectmen, it goes to the Board of Finance, and the Board of Finance can determine how to fund this transaction. In the financial part, we address the approval of a transfer. We address the approval of the Board of Finance using their contingency fund, which the last meeting prior to this one had about 109,000 still in that account. But it also says we are giving pre-approval should the Board of Finance opt to take it from the general fund. In that particular case, the reason we're doing this is so it does not need to return back to the RTM once it's approval, because we've basically said, however you want to fund it, we've already given you the approval to do this. All we're waiting for is the Board of Selectmen to determine how they're going to do it and the Board of Finance to determine from there. I have also heard in the OPC, I have another name for that meeting, but in OPC, it's my understanding that Seth was asked whether or not it is usual for the RTM to generate something and bring it back up to the rest of the boards. And Seth gave one answer, I have another one. It seemed to be fine for the RTM to deal with the bag ordinance. As such, anything controversial seems to find its way to the RTM, and we can then return it back to everybody else for their review and approval. So I just have this falling into that. To me, this is voting for puppies and kittens. So are there any comments on this issue?
Yeah, I guess it's one motion, or do we have to do one motion?
It's one motion.
I just have a quick understanding question. Where did I miss the resolution? Did I not see the resolution somewhere, or where did it come
It should have
from?
been
Or
in your package.
must have missed it.
The
So
cost is,
what's it gonna do? It's gonna make, like, are we gonna have, it's no longer gonna be the Board of Selectmen, it'll be the Select Board or something
I
like
don't
that?
know what's going to be happening on the Board of Selectmen, all right? But whenever they refer to he, it will be some other pronoun that's not a he or a she. The company that's going to be providing the service, it's two parts. First, they're going to do the search and do the correction. But then when it comes back, after they made the changes, the RTM needs to approve the changes that they're going to be making to the ordinances, because we're responsible for the ordinances. And this company has done this umpteen times. I should also note that during Monica's swearing in, I haven't been there with Ms. Grogan, mentioned that she had actually searched this and proposed this to TGS&A over 5 years ago. So it's 5 years in the making, but it's, to me, long overdue.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything against it at all.
No.
I think I just was trying to understand it. Like, that's kind of why I asked the questions. But can
No.
we also, so you said it's $4,500 approximately is what the cost is going to be?
Yes, they've already have a bill and everything for what the cost to do this would be.
And in our saying that we are kind of approving wherever they take it from, can we say they should probably take it from monies that are already in the budget?
We
Or
cannot,
can we say that we would prefer that versus
we cannot,
they
we
may make
cannot-
the decision, but can we voice that? I mean, it just, everything we're dealing with is all these non-budget things. And yes, it's only $4,500, but we could $4,500 ourselves to death. So, can we just say it would seem that it should come out of budgeted monies first before it comes out of others?
I have already suggested to Kate and Jen that they find a way to transfer from the budget appropriations that they have $4,500 to pay for this. And it would be done. And I actually asked them to do it before the 21st because that way it's done. However, because certain people perceive this to be controversial, I don't understand how, but I guess they do. They decided to let it go through the various channels. So the Board of Finance will probably ultimately have the decision, and we can have conversations, but the Board of Finance doesn't control transfers. The only thing they can transfer out of is their contingency. And since it seems to be going to the Board of Finance, it's either going to be out of their contingency or out of the general fund. And I just tend to believe it's coming out of the contingency, which is what things like this is supposed to come out of.
Okay, I'm not going to quibble over it. I think it's a good thing to get done and everything. I'm just back to budget. Budget these things, budget money, budget. And if
Yes,
you can take it out of existing budget, that would be good. And I'm not making the decision. It's just a suggestion that it would seem.
This was raised earlier, and we made the decision in rules not to move it forward on budget night. Otherwise, we could have addressed it then. In hindsight, I think we probably should have done it on budget night. So, because it's for this current year's budget. We're taking it out of fiscal year 21, not out of next year's budget.
Okay, gotcha.
Martha, your hand was raised?
Yeah, I just so I can understand, who has actually generated this resolution now? Is it the Board of Selectmen or is it TGS&A? Actually, I'm unclear.
TGS&A has generated the resolution. In fact, they're going to be the ones reporting on it. We're just reporting on explaining why that financial component was there. And I spoke to Jen about it, and Jen then understood when I'm saying I don't want this to come back to us. So we're really giving you approval to take it out of the general fund if the Board of Finance so desires to do that. Otherwise, it's Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance discretion. Mark Adeletta has joined us, Mike. You didn't see?
Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome. Hi, Mike. Mark. Any other questions or comments on this? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any no votes? Are there any abstentions? So I guess we're up to 16 to 0. By the end of the night, we'll be up to 18, which is one more than our.
We have 16, Jack.
Yes, I know. I was joking that we keep on adding them, that maybe at the end of the night, we'll have more member votes than our committee.
I can add my grandchildren.
Yeah. Can you bring them on camera so we can say hi to them?
Oh, they're asleep.
Okay. we are going to make an amendment to the next item, but let's first discuss and take action on the accounting entry to increase Park and Rec income and the corresponding Park and Rec expenses. And so let's first move that. I have Stacy again.
Stacy?
Who's going to second it? I can't use Beth. She just left the building.
I'll do it.
Jan, we have Jan.
Okay.
Okay. So I need somebody to move the amendment that I'm going to read. First, let me explain. Then we can move the amendment. I went over the amendment with Wayne Fox this afternoon, and he's fine with the amendment. Usually, if we're going to give an additional appropriation for expenses during the course of a year, we're taking it if we're going to do it. We know what the source of funding is. So it's coming out of the general fund, or it's going to be used by some other source. In this particular case, it's not coming out of the general fund. And since this is an accounting entry, it needs to balance. So what we're actually doing in this resolution is we're increasing the Park and Rec budgeted revenue by $250,000. And we're increasing the Park and Rec expenditures, appropriations by $250,000 so that it balances. Because we're increasing both budgeted revenue and budgeted expenses. They cannot, in the town side, just spend money because revenue they have more revenue than they planned in the budget. That's one of the differences between the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen, because we're voting on a net budget for the Board of Ed. If they get more revenue in, as long as they don't go over the net expenditures, they can spend it in theory. So the motion, the last part of the motion reads, and then I'll tell you where we're adding. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the representative town meeting of the town of Darien hereby approves a special appropriation in the amount of $250,000 to replenish the expense account for the Park and Rec Commission. And this is the amendment. And the representative town meeting hereby approves an increase in the Park and Rec fiscal year 2021 revenue budget to accommodate the upcoming spring and summer program through June 30th, 2021. So I need somebody to move that amendment. Stacy, I need a second. Lisa, do Bob, because Bob hadn't done it before. So we got to spread the wealth.
Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome. Is there any questions on this amendment?
Jack, my understanding of what you just described is this, and tell me if I have this right, is that we're appropriating money from the general fund to cover the additional expenses.
No, we're not doing anything from the general fund. That's part of the problem.
Okay. You mentioned an appropriation, though?
Well, the appropriation is we're approving an appropriation so that they can spend $250,000 more on the expense side. And the offset to that is increasing their revenue by $250,000.
But you said there's an appropriation to cover the expenses. An appropriation from what?
From the revenue side, we're balancing by increasing revenue so that they can increase expense. And since we have line item veto on both these things, we have to increase both of them.
Okay, thank you.
Is this for,
Believe me, it took Jen 4 times to explain this to me based upon how the transfer was written.
is this
So-
for 2022 budget, 21 to
No,
22?
this is 2021. Here's what's really happened. They have about 600,000 extra revenue, more than they've ever done before. This is like an all-time revenue in Park and Rec services. Problem is, there's expenses in order to deliver those services this year. They don't have, they would be over their budget. So we have to increase the expense so they can spend the money to deliver the services for which they have revenue for.
But
Jack,
if
the
they're going to be
confusion
over
is-
their budget, they are going to be over their revenue, so it all comes out in the wash anyway. So why do you have to?
Because
I
they're
don't
not
think
allowed to
because-
overspend because they are
Oh.
limited in what they can spend because that's what they were budgeted for. They cannot offset revenue and expenditures unless we do this resolution.
Jack,
Jack,
I think
The
you,
confusion is for the accountants because you would assume money's coming in, it goes into an account. Money goes out, it goes from that account. But what we're actually doing, and that's particular to the municipal budget, we do balance the revenues and the expenditures. That's all.
Yeah, in the past, we used to have a net account where they had revenues and expenses going into one account, and then they would transfer it at the end of the year into the general fund. That's not good accounting. And so that changed about 2-3 years ago. But now, because of that, we need to increase both. We could have taken the money out of the general fund and then allowed the revenue to just sweep in at the end of the year, and that would have been one way to do it. They decided not to do out of the general fund because we've had a lot of little things coming out of the general fund, and that's not necessarily good for the rating agencies. A lot simpler, in theory, to just increase the budget for the current year by 250 to offset the increase in the expense.
Jack, if I understand you correctly, we're receiving more money than we anticipated, which will allow Parks and Rec to spend more, and we're okaying that going over that spending limit, using that extra money that's coming in. Is that a fair and accurate way of describing this?
Actually, I'm going to correct it. We're not okaying them to go over their budget on the expense side because we are approving an increase in their expense budget.
Okay.
But we need the other side of the journal entry. And since it's not coming out of the general fund, we have to have something to offset it. And the way we're offsetting it is by increasing their budgeted revenue.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's
you
not
said
an
they're
easy
going to have
concept.
600,000 increase in revenue. Why isn't there a corresponding increase in expenses?
Because they are not spending the full amount. Some of it's actually, I hate to use this term in a municipal, but some of it's profit.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to clarify that so that,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
'cause you were throwing
So are
different
we
numbers out.
actually,
Go ahead, Martha.
are we actually saying, I mean, what is today, the 14th? There are like 16 more days left in the fiscal year. Are we actually saying you can go ahead and spend 250,000 now that wasn't planned for? Or has it
We are-
already been?
It hasn't been spent yet, but they know they need to spend it in order to deliver these services. So we're essentially saying, yes, we're giving you the budget authorization to spend the money that you need to do this. Yes.
What are they spending it on?
It's going to be things like the people that they're hiring in order to deliver service. They may need some more supplies based upon what it is. They may have had, like, thought they were going to do, I'm going to use this as an example. It's not necessarily the case. They're going to maybe do, like, they thought they'd do 4 tennis lessons. And it turns out they had such demand that they're doing 8. So they have to have the other people. The way we're going to be splitting this up is that we're going to be the lead and explain the accounting. And then Adele Coniff and Park and Rec are going to explain the reason why and what the expenses and the revenue are.
Okay, it's a little confusing to me because, I mean, are they doing all these 7 tennis classes prior to the beginning of July 1, which would, you know, be in next year's budget? You know, there are other areas within the budget that have revenue and expenses. Are we going to be, you know, truing things up like this in the future? It's just very hard to understand.
Well, I think it was a surprise because they've never hit this before. I mean, I think they're like 215% or something in what I saw over what they budgeted for the current year in revenue. And I think a lot of it has to do with COVID, quite honestly, that people are not necessarily planning the same travel that they would have otherwise. So they need to have this expense authorization. I mean, they could be over budget right now, but this is now authorizing and giving the authorization so they're not overspending.
So most likely they've already spent this money since we're partially into
I'm
June.
pretty sure they've committed to it, if not
And
officially.
are they sure this
unofficially.
revenue is not for things in July and August?
Some of it may well be.
That was my question is, are we,
And so it sounds like we're not
mixing-
matching revenues and expenses in the correct period.
Sounds like they're asking for too much money, given how much time is left in the
They're
year.
not. Actually, they're not. This has gone through. This
Sorry.
was approved by the Board of Finance already. It was approved by the Board of Selectmen already, and they've done this analysis. They have more detail than what I have right now, and I guess I should have provided greater detail on what it was. But the write-up is something that basically this is how they chose to handle it. I would have preferred that it comes out of the general fund because it's a lot cleaner.
Well, it's
And
not my problem that we're like doing this. I kind of understand some of the rationale, but it would be nice to see a document that says, this is
Thank
what we
you.
took in for this period, and this is what we're expending for this period, and this is why we need to move this. You know, right now, I mean, maybe I missed it. Maybe you did send it out, and I apologize if you did. But if you didn't,
I did
or
not
they didn't,
receive that detail, and I don't think the Board of Finance did either.
well, then
But
how
let
can you
me
approve something you don't have numbers on?
hold on. Let me just go and see.
Sorry, Jack, not trying to be a pain in the butt, but it's not adding up in my.
No, I understand.
No, I'm going to abstain because I don't have enough detail really to support this.
All right, let me go and see if I can find the detail on it.
I understand the accounting of it. I understand that revenues were surprisingly up. The nuance is that it can bridge 2 different fiscal years, and I think that gets, you know, they need the money, they need to spend it now to lock in to provide the services for the summer. So you're going to incur some expenses, but the revenues are going to catch up. If I'm understanding this right, it's not super clean because
It's also how they record revenue. They get paid. It's almost in certain ways they're like cash basis.
Yeah, and I support this, but it would it would help a little to say we're incurring these expenses in fiscal year 21 because we have to commit to fund services and pay for programming that's going to happen in July and August. So that's what I understand, is that there's a little bit of a bridge.
And also, if these revenues are for July and August, why are they in this year's?
But you have to incur the expense now, right?
Yes.
Like you're incurring expense in fiscal 21 or in fiscal 21, but the program actually doesn't start until, let's say, July, August. So again, it's we're on an accounting timing, they're on a program timing. And so
Yeah.
it creates a little confusion. I understand it, and I am going to support it, but it would be interesting.
I mean, I hear you, but it sounds like there still should be some numbers that come to us.
Okay,
So that
so
we can understand it. That's all. That's all. I don't even, I'm
Okay.
not saying it's a bad thing or a wrong thing. It probably is the right thing, but it makes me a little queasy to say yes or no to something when I don't really understand it. The concept, I'm not opposed to helping them, be able to do what they need to do at all. This is not what this is.
Right. Jack, I have to concur with Iris. I feel like, what we're doing is we're being presented with something without facts that we need to have. I mean, there should be a spreadsheet that just says that lays everything out the way Jenny described it. And, in concept, we want to support the town's business, and that things apparently are doing well and being successful. And I think that's really good for the Parks and Rec program. But I think we need to have a much more detailed presentation, whether it be in a form of a memo or a spreadsheet, just saying this is what's going on here, so that we can all understand it in actual real numbers.
Okay, so let me give you some real numbers, okay? At the end of May, and this is in the packet for tomorrow's meeting, the Park and Rec program revenue is $423,000 over budget. Okay? Give me a second. The Park and Rec current expenditures are currently at the end of May 96.93% used, and typically at this time of year they would be 83.6% used. So the pending $250,000 is the approximate cost of the program expenses associated with this program that allows them to spend it in June, because otherwise they're going to be over their budget and they would have to stop spending.
So they're going to spend $250,000 in June, is what we're saying.
It may be a commitment. What I'm hearing is you want more detail. Obviously, I do not have it today. Actually can't see the meeting anymore.
I'd be comfortable.
Is it possible that they didn't know because of the virus, they didn't expect to be open in June, so they have expenses and income in June of $250,000, and that's the way they run their business. And I'm not concerned about any how this comes down to, as long as it's not over on the expense side.
My position, you're giving us the accounting numbers, but I feel that we should have a write-up from Park and Recreation
We
where,
do.
where they
but not
generated
with the
extra
numbers.
revenues and how they are going to, you know, expend the extra dollars they're requesting, 250. I mean, all I know is program expenses are up, but in what areas, you know, unless it's, I might have missed it in my packet, but I don't see anything like that.
They did not
Is it-
give the specifics. I can ask prior to the meeting next Monday, but we can vote and people can abstain. And then
Okay.
hopefully I can get it in the next day or two by speaking to Kate.
Yeah, I just think it's good practice that people, department heads should get in the habit of providing this type of information.
I agree with Martha. I
Yes.
think that it's very
Thank you.
important that we have numbers to look at.
No,
We
I
are,
don't disagree. My fault for not ensuring that I had them. All right, are there any other comments or can we vote? And if we have abstentions, we're gonna have abstentions. I've lost my video, so
I'm here, Jack. I'm here.
Should I do a roll call vote?
yes, please.
Okay. I'll start with our list in reverse order here. Iris,
I'm
Oh,
gonna
I'm
have to abstain because I don't
okay.
know what I really understand what I'm voting on, so I have to abstain.
Sure. Peter,
Sorry, I
Peter, can you hear
abstain.
me?
I abstain
Okay.
on the same grounds as Iris.
Jan? You're on mute, Jan, I think.
Sorry,
Jan, I can't hear you.
I'm in favor of it.
In favor of it? Okay, thank you. Jenny?
I'm in favor.
Stacy?
I feel like this is a little bit of deja vu all over again. I feel like we keep asking to be reported with the same information, and we're not given the information. So I think I have to abstain.
Bert?
I'm in favor.
Lisa?
I'm with the group that doesn't think they have enough information. I abstain.
Okay, thank you. Mark? Mark, are you on?
Mark has left the building, it looks like.
Okay. Barry? Barry? Okay, Martha? Oh, hello?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Louisa? Louisa?
I'm back, Mike.
Who's speaking? Barry? And Barry, how do you vote? Barry? Okay, Louisa? Jack?
I vote for.
I'm in favor.
I agree with what you've said, but I'm gonna vote for.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I just
No, I know you're not. I know you're not.
I'm trying to be a pain in the butt. But
Yes.
No, I have to go back and be a pain in the butt to get the numbers. That,
Yes.
but
I think they're,
when we're done with this, I want to explain something else, but go ahead.
as to my vote, I'm going to abstain for all the good reasons we've mentioned. I think we need information, and I agree with that. So I'm abstaining as well. James?
Abstain.
Okay. Let me see. Beth, are you here? Can I hear you?
Okay, now I can hear you. I was frozen for a minute. I abstain for the same reason.
Okay. And Bob?
I abstain as well.
Okay. There are 9 abstentions and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 in favors. So the, Jack, the abstentions,
I don't think that passes then.
yeah. I agree.
I have to check on that. We're going to have a special meeting. I will try and get what information I have, but we are the lead on this. And the fact of the matter is that the funds need to be approved, or we're returning money back to people because we don't have the funding to provide programs. I mean, there is an offset to this. If the RTM does not approve, we have to return money.
Let's give it all back.
Okay.
I'm fine with the special meeting, Jack. I just, if these are the numbers, they should be able to.
We don't have to go any further. What happens here is that there's been a change in the Board of Selectmen that I'm not necessarily happy with. In the past, all of the executive summaries would come through the town administrator. And as such, we would get an executive summary, and in fact, we would even get the executive summaries and other things like that. This, because I actually referred to this in the budget meeting that we had in May, knowing that this was coming down the road. And when I looked at the rules agenda, I noticed that it wasn't on the agenda because of that change. And now department heads are responsible for shepherding through to the RTM and the like, where I even had a problem because the Board of Finance meeting, the Board of Finance meeting said that they approved and they were supposed to recommend to the full RTM. And we were on notice from the Board of Finance. If they're the source, when it's supposed to go on expenses from the Board of Finance to us, essentially, because we're the liaison, F&B's liaison to the Board of Finance. And the Board of Finance didn't mention it to us. So, I mean, once it leaves the Board of Selectmen and goes to the Board of Finance, it's no longer a Board of Selectmen issue, Board of Finance issue. So there's some confusion on it. So we got a last minute write-up. It was the same write-up of what was given to the Board of Finance. Certain people are better in giving us financial detail than others. Like if Jeremy was here or if Ed was here, I know I'm going to get numbers of good numbers. Other departments may not be as prone for doing numbers. They run great programs, but their numbers aren't the best. So I am now in a position that I will be telling Kate and Jamie that they better provide some numbers for our special meeting that we will most probably have on Monday prior to the RTM meeting, or we're going to report it. But one way or another, they need this money. So we got to figure out how we get some of the numbers better than what we got. And I apologize, but my focus has been on making sure the accounting was right and the resolution and the amendment was right, as opposed to the details that were to follow.
It's not on you, Jack. The Board of Selectmen, we've been very clear for a long time on what we
Not the
expect.
Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance approved it. It's in their court.
Well, we've been very
just
clear as F&B of what information we need from all the boards in the past. So it's not on you, Jack.
Yeah, Jack, this
So
is,
it's still on me to make sure we have prepared stuff for the meeting, and unfortunately, my meeting is that. But we still have an amendment on the floor. So I'm going to take all those abstentions on whether or not we're passing the resolution, but I still need approval to do the amendment, which is different than approving the resolution. So can we have a vote on the amendment, which is
Can we have
different
a
than the
motion to,
resolution.
do we need a separate motion for that?
Yes, we
What
do.
is the amendment?
The amendment
Can you
is the
repeat?
addition on the therefore it be resolved that not only approves a special appropriation in the amount of $250,000 to replenish the expense account for the Park and Rec Commission. The amendment is to add, and the representative town meeting hereby approves an increase in the Park and Rec fiscal year 2021 revenue budget. That's all we're doing, is saying that's an accounting issue. Whether or not we're approving that we have enough information to approve the overall, we still have the 9. So can we take a vote on the amendment?
But doesn't the amendment have the amount in it?
Yeah, both sides are 250 on both sides.
But that's the same thing. I'm just, my head's going in circles. So there's two things. There's an amendment and there's a.
The amendment is just making sure that they have an increase in the budget. That regardless if it's 100,000 or 50,000, we need to have a amendment that they're also taking. We're also going to increase a revenue budget amount. This is just what the debit of the what the credit portion of the journal entry is.
But
So they can accept the money, but they can't spend it.
No, this isn't amending. This is the amendment does not have 250. What it's just saying is the other side of the entry.
But if I may say so, I mean, the town clerk's revenue is up this year because of the very active real estate market and collection of conveyance taxes. They've taken in more revenue than was originally projected, and yet, you know, we're not doing a similar thing for them.
Because quite honestly, the town clerk's revenue is a conveyance tax, which they do nothing for other than record.
Associated expenses on the other side.
But nevertheless, it's accounting. I mean, you know.
Yeah, but all that's part of the, we went through this. I can go back and go to that discussion of why we're returning in the neighborhood of $3.4 million this year, which is highly unusual. Part of that is about $700,000 based upon the conveyance tax and the refinancing of mortgages above what was budgeted.
Well, Jack, what did I just abstain on? I thought this is what I was abstaining on. Is this
No, you're abstaining on the overall resolution, but not, the amendment has to be added. Otherwise, we don't have a legit. You know what?
Okay.
If you guys don't want to vote on the amendment, we're not, we're not
difference?
voting on the amendment. Forget it. I mean,
I just understand the difference between the
I'm
resolution.
going in a circle. We will have a meeting on Monday.
Jack, since we have another meeting, we might as well deal with those issues.
That's right. That's why I'm saying it. If the amount is holding people up, then there's no sense to talk about the nuances until we have the other meeting and see if we can get the information.
Jack, just make sure I just kind of close the loop on my thinking on this, is that if hypothetically there is no second meeting on this, okay, because there's nothing more forthcoming from the powers that be, would they then basically have the ability to then go back and appropriate monies from the general funds to cover this additional expense?
They might, but that would require a, first of all, we're still at what the 250,000 is.
But I'm getting past that. I'm just saying procedurally, whatever the number is.
They would have to come back to the RTM and they would have 9 days to do it.
Okay. Thanks.
Because this is a 2021 item.
Got it. Thanks, Jack.
You're welcome. Stacy, when we get done, can you contact Mike and see if we can have a 7 o'clock meeting on Monday, the 21st.
Already wrote him an email.
Thank you. Let's move to some easy stuff. I hear what everybody's saying. That's not an issue, and I apologize for my focus being on the accounting as opposed to the detail.
You know what?
Just
Stacy
apologize
said
for.
too,
So
it's not your fault.
No, it's not.
It's the fault of people not providing enough detail.
Yes, correct.
Agreed.
If I still will take certain responsibility, as I believe that when things come to us, we should have enough information, and I should have said I don't have enough information on this.
All right, Jack, we'll shoot the messenger later. Okay, how's that?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
since we're already cleaning up everything, I'd like to know when a motion passes, with 4 yes, no nos, and I guess 8 abstentions, did the motion pass or not? Do we need a majority under the rules of Robert for this group? Do we need a majority of the votes present in yes, or is it a simple majority when we take a vote like this? That's something we need to find out.
And that's why Wayne gets paid the big bucks, because that's who's getting a call tomorrow.
Thank you.
And just Bert, for the record, there were 13 votes recorded on this, and there were 4 yeses and 9 abstentions.
Okay.
So the abstentions didn't disagree.
No, understood, but let's just, I would still prefer to have the meeting on Monday to see what additional information they can generate during that time. And I'll give Adele a call to see if she has some additional information. All right. Let's talk about some additional items that we have for summer projects. F&B has been requested to lead an initiative on and it's confidential, unfortunately, but I've contacted Mike, and it was a project that had been going on in 2019 that we had to stop because we didn't have certain information, and Jamie asked F&B to lead it again. As we get more information, it will be coming back to us. But I think it's still confidential at this time to do it. We're not buying another Highland Farms. Just to put everybody at rest. Couple of other things. I need 2 people to sort of watch the Board of Ed on 2 different areas. One is looking at any potential unbudgeted COVID-19 fall reopening expenses. I see Stacy, do Peter or where's Beth? Is Beth there? Yeah, Beth is.
That's waving.
Yeah, you were waving and you were over on my left-hand side. You ended up in my right, so I didn't see you at first. So can you 2 and Peter monitor that? If you do see some expenses, some of it's going to come out of the additional funding they had, but it's something that we should be watching. Nothing has risen, but just so that we're aware of things. Dr. Adley has discussed some of this already. And so there are some grants that they will be using, but it's something we just like to stay out in front of things. So if anything does come up, shoot us an email. As Stacy was kind enough to tell me at 10 o'clock at night, after all the awards that were given out, that they were finally discussing the $225,000. God bless the Board of Ed for being that thing, and happy birthday. We want to go and continue on the Board of Finance, the capital reserve. I want to I'll send out the analysis that I did. And we want to go and talk about it with Kate and Jen to just have any adjustments and then hand it over to Jay-Z and Palin for their adoption as guidance for that capital account, and see if they're willing to adopt that. There's $1.3 million for fire engine that's currently in the capital reserve. It's already paid for from the accruals, but I want to have a discussion, and obviously Bert and Jenny, I want to have a conversation with the Board of Finance to determine whether or not the $1.3 million fire engine, which they'll be paying 25% down shortly, shouldn't be the first bonding issue as opposed to keeping about $800,000 sitting in the capital reserve for the next 18 months. And that would free up 1.3 million to pay for capital and reduce that for our taxpayers next year. Even though I'm not necessarily in favor of bonding things that we've already have the money for. But since we're not earning anything on it based on market conditions, there may be some other things to consider. Let's see. Triple school renovation project. I know we're running late, but I'll tell a quick story. I've mentioned Ollie before, and Ollie's pretty fearless little 2.5-year-old. We were at Weed Beach with his mom, and he didn't like going down the fire engine pole that's on the playground. And so he decided to jump 4 feet instead of going down the pole. And even his dad said, I wish he was hurt just a wee bit, so he didn't think that this was a good idea. But all he did is dust himself off and ran back and tried to do it again. The following week, they live in Harborview in Norwalk, and very nice little community. One of the fathers dressed up as an Easter bunny. And so mom is taking a step forward to bring Ollie to the Easter bunny. And every step forward that mom takes, Ollie takes 2 steps backwards. Why? Because this Easter bunny scared the bejeebies out of him. So I look at these 3 school renovation projects, which, number one, the Board of Ed still has to go to the Board of Selectmen and ask for a building committee. And then I remind everyone that building committees need to be approved by the RTM, so we don't run into something we did 2 years ago in June. But building a new school is actually easier than renovating 3 different schools, in my opinion. There's a lot of decisions still have to be made of whether or not the Oxbridge Building Committee, the team that they put together is outstanding. Hopefully we can get some of the same people to do it, but it's still going to be going on when we're running this committee, and people on building committees get a little burnt out. James, you know a little bit about this because you did the Weed Beach renovation. It's a very time-consuming project, and it takes a lot out of people. So people are very rare that they jump from one school building committee to another. There's a lot of information we still need to follow, so I'd like people to be following that. I'll be very honest, without having a lot of information on anything, to bring it back to Ollie, the 3 building committees is my Easter bunny. It scares the bejeebies out of me. So that's something we should be tracking and keep abreast of what's going on, so that we're a little bit more attuned to the Easter bunny and not so scared about what the potential of that is. That's about $75 million and the initial estimate. But the other thing that I've been told by Kate is not important to throw a number out there. It's more important to figure out what the educational needs are, what they need to do, and let the numbers and the specifications that's necessary drive the ultimate numbers. Anything else that anybody wants to do besides taking this summer off on the legislative front?
And no hurry on. But on the 1.3 million for the fire engine, you know, I understand you can get sort of off-the-shelf fire engines, but most departments request modifications or add-ons. I'd just be curious to know at some point, you know, does this 1.3 represent some add-ons, modifications, or is this, you know, a straight purchase?
We can find that out. That's something worthwhile to investigate. I do believe that the Board of Selectmen put in their budget some money for a emergency services study. And I think fire engines, police, emergency services will all be part of that. So there may be some additional information we're going to be getting, but it's a worthwhile question. Jan?
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore what you said, Kate said. Having worked on building projects within schools, never a start to finish one, but having, as a Board of Ed, been a part of a number of building modifications and renovations, I think it's very important that we keep in mind that the product is not the building, it's the education. And that is what needs to drive what renovations happen and what buildings get built. So I just wanted to, as an aside, underscore what Kate said as being the philosophy I believe we should have going forward. That's it.
The other, the other part of what Kate's saying is, you know, if you're saying it's, even though it's preliminary numbers, if you're saying 25 million each, and one turns out to be 20 and the other one ends up being 30, it's more important to get the committees done, go and do the specifications, which, you know, the Board of Ed well knows. And then let's see what the numbers end up being and how best to proceed.
Exactly.
Anything else? Oh, yes, there is. Approval of outstanding minutes.
Yes, these are the minutes for May 5th. And there's one typo, correcting a name from Lori to Laura Mosher as one of the other attendees who attended that meeting.
Mike, when you're doing the minutes for this meeting, just put down PZ&H committee members.
I will, Jack. I've been keeping track.
Okay. Yeah, no, I wasn't. If you didn't have everybody's name, that would have been fine.
Certainly.
Whatever you choose to do.
I've been trying to keep track of everyone as they're coming and going. So the draft you'll see will reflect that.
Right. Mike Wheeler will actually have the names of everyone because he prints it out. We'll have the names of everyone on the of P&Z. And
okay,
yes, I was just sent a text. The Board of Ed has already approved the education specs, but again, that still has to be going into a building committee.
Yeah.
So
do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Stacy and Jenny. Yep. Everybody, you want to do your yays and nays and noes, Jack?
Anybody against the minutes? No? Anybody abstaining from the minutes? That's good. Everybody else is in favor of the minutes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Jack, we're already all set for our meeting on Monday at 7 o'clock. I'll send out the link after this meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I was adjourning at 8:41, Jack.
Okay, all in favor of ending this wonderful meeting? Thanks a lot.